You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. Great to have you with me here today. Excited to start the new year with you and to bring you a topic today that I hope will serve you well over the next year. And that is how to become your own integrative doctor. It would bring me no greater pleasure than to see you really become the go-to person for your family, for your loved ones, for your coworkers, for your community, whatever it might be. I would love for you to be that person where you start to understand when people bring up a concept of, oh, this is the best thing that you should be doing, oh, that's the worst thing that you could do, that you are the one that can make sense of it. That you're the one that begins to kind of pull it all together for your friends and your family, right? And that's what being an integrative practitioner is all about. I want you to understand the concept. So when someone talks about carbohydrates or protein or fat or interval workouts or yoga or walking, which one is the best one, right? Or probiotics. Should we be doing them? Yes or no? That's what I want to go over today. I'm going to cover all of those topics and a lot more so that you can help others, right? Help yourself, but then help others to decipher this information. So when you see it on the news or you see it written online, that you know whether it's the right choice for you and your loved one. So let's start to get into that right now. And again, these are all questions that I'm happy to answer. My team is happy to answer. Head on over to cabralsupportgroup.com. If you haven't already, it's our free private Facebook group. It's completely free to join. And we are always happy to be able to answer your questions over there. The other thing that we would love for you to do is head on over to Instagram. Just go to stephencabral.com, my name. Follow along. Feel free to comment. I'd love to hear from you. Love when you tag us in the stories. And that goes for Equilibrium Nutrition, Integrative Health Practitioner, and then my name, Stephen Cabral. Well, let's get into the topic today. So the topic today is really how do you become a truly integrative health practitioner yourself. So what integrative means, and I kind of toyed around, should it be called become your own naturopathic doctor this year, your own functional medicine doctor, your integrative doctor, whatever it may be. It's this, is that integrative means all-inclusive. It means bringing in everything that will work. Now, these are things that they don't always teach, of course, to functional medicine doctors, medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, but an integrative doctor is willing to look at everything, right? So they're willing to say, like I just did last week, and say, although essential oils does not make up the bulk of my practice, I am absolutely all for using whatever works. And I recommended thieves oil last week, and I do hope that you checked out that show. But being an integrative practitioner also means that even if you are a distributor for essential oils, and even if you love essential oils, that you understand that there's a time and place for essential oils, and they're absolutely amazing. And then there's a time and place where someone has candida overgrowth or someone has a B6 deficiency, and essential oil could be one of the things that helps overall with digestion and calming stress, but also being able to replace those deficiencies or remove those toxicities works great as well. So being an integrative practitioner, in my opinion, means being non-dogmatic. Not saying, oh, there's only one way to get well, there's only one best way, or we can only use one thing. The best example I can always give is an exercise. So an exercise, it's either a CrossFit workout or it's nothing, or it's either this boot camp or it's nothing, or this spin class or it's nothing, or we're either using kettlebells and bands, that you're not going to get any great effort or great work out of bands. You should be doing kettlebells only. Well, I've experienced that. I've seen that throughout my kind of life cycle in the health and fitness industry as well. We went with always on stability balls, right? Never on a bench. And then all of a sudden, okay, back to using a bench for some strength-based training. So what I'm going to teach you today is that there's a time and place for literally everything. And I want to show you how to understand, how to know where that time and place is. So for the first one, really easy to go through as one of the most popular topics out there right now, and that's carbohydrates. So there are those advocates of either a very low carbohydrate diet, below 50 grams per day, sometimes even less than 25 grams per day, especially when we're associated with more of a keto-based diet. But the problem is that keto-based diet, although it can help people start to feel great for a couple of weeks or so, not great in the long term, right? Or the people who say, well, don't eat those carbs or starches or fruit because you have candida overgrowth. And sure, when you stop eating the fruit or eating the carbs or starches, there'll be less candida overgrowth because you're not allowing it to proliferate. You're not feeding it all of those prebiotics, which we'll be talking about in a moment. The problem is all of it's very short-sighted. So when I see online, people talk about digestive issues, people just say, just cut the carbs out of your diet. And I've said this before, but it's completely short-sighted. What you're saying is, okay, we're essentially going to put a Band-Aid on the problem. Removing the problem is literally a Band-Aid in some cases because carbohydrates are a perfectly natural food source and should make up the bulk of our diet. Now, people say, oh, that's ridiculous. They should make up the bulk of our diet because of this, this, and this. You say, listen, the volume, the bulk of our diet should absolutely be carbohydrates. And that is plant-based vegetables, fruit, and for a lot of people, starches, right, as an energy-based fuel. And we'll talk about that as well. So when you're saying that someone should just cut all the starch out of their diet or all the carbs out of their diet, well, now we're left with two main macros. So we're left with protein and we're left with fat. Now, both of those are totally fine in their own right. There's nothing wrong with them just in and of themselves. The problem is this, is they don't contain the antioxidants, right? Think of oxidant as aging, oxidizing, breaking down, catabolic, catabolism, creating free radicals. Oxidation, right? When you see things oxidize, what does it look like? Well, it looks like rust, right? So when you have metal outside, it begins to oxidize and it starts to turn a rust-based color. Well, oxidation happens in our body every single minute of the day, but we use antioxidants, our own internal antioxidants, exogenous, outside of our body, antioxidants as well. And we get those antioxidants predominantly from fruits and vegetables, anything brightly colored, right? Now, are some of those antioxidants in things like wild salmon? Yes, that bright color comes from that, shrimp, certain types of trout with a bright orange color. But really, it's located in our green vegetables, our blues, our purples, our reds, our oranges, our yellows, and even the white, and the garlic, and the cauliflower, and the mushrooms, etc. So you have to understand is that when you're looking at all of these fad diets over the next year, and people are telling you just eliminate all of your carbohydrates, as an integrative doctor, because at work you're going to become your own integrative doctor, is that you're always asking, why would I do that? Why would I remove all the carbs? And if it works, why does it work? So that's the true difference with a naturopathic doctor or bioregulatory doctor or integrative health practitioner, is that you're always asking why. So if someone says to me, I'm going on the carnivore diet, I'm going to ask them why. What's the reason? And they could say, oh, well, I have digestive issues. And I say, okay, so why would eating all meats help you on the carnivore diet? They say, well, it's when I eat vegetables or fruit, I start to get bloated. And I say, okay, understandable, makes sense. You want to remove those. But would it make more sense to figure out why when you're eating those carbohydrates, you get bloated in the first place? Wouldn't it be better to figure out if that's an H. pylori issue, a candida issue, a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth issue, an imbalance of the microbiome in terms of different types of flora or bacteria in the gut? Or maybe it's parasitic, right? Maybe it's parasite-based. Or maybe it's all four, right? Maybe you have Clostridium difficile, you have Klebsiella, you have E. coli, you have other types of bacteria that are just overgrown in the gut. Well, you can figure that out. That's the nice thing about it. So instead of just saying, I'm not going to eat any of the fruit and vegetables, I know those are the main foods that help to prevent cancer, right? Because that's been proven now, right? I gave you, if you tune back a couple episodes ago, just go to stephencabral.com/podcast. The only proven anti-cancer diet. Now, again, I'm not even saying that I'm against certain types of protein and meat and fish and all that. I'm not saying that. And I'm certainly not against certain types of fat. I'm not. But what I am saying is there's not research saying that, oh, you go on the carnivore diet and you're going to prevent cancer. It's actually on the contrary. The more meat, the more IGF-1 levels that I've spoken about before, potentially the higher risk for cancer. Now, is it going to happen tomorrow? No, that's the problem. So we have an issue with correlation because you don't eat a ton of protein and then get cancer the next day. That's not how it works. But more so, what we need are the antioxidants so that if you're eating meat and you're eating certain types of protein, that you can combat them as well with all of the good fiber and the good antioxidants and plant-based nutrients. They're called phytochemicals inside of these great produce-based choices that we have. So what I say to the person is, ask why. Why do you get bloated from fruit and vegetables? We know that you're supposed to have them. We know as hunter-gatherers, we were mainly gatherers, right? We gathered up what we could eat. And that would absolutely be any type of vegetation. Plenty of vegetation to go around. So that's what we do. And now you could say, oh, well, when people lived up towards Alaska, things like that, there was less vegetation. Absolutely. But that was, we're talking millions of years after human evolution. Would anybody be able to go that far north and survive? It wasn't like that at all. Humans have been around for quite some time. And if you do go back and you look at the anthropomorphology of how humans came about, which I've been doing really a ton of deep dive research on because I really want to get down to the science of this. 7 million years ago, we shared this common ancestor with the chimp. And even if you look at the chimps of today that maybe haven't evolved to that same level that we could say we're at, our digestive tracts and a lot of things are still very, very similar. And so we know what this human or this chimp-like body is supposed to essentially eat. And again, you can make it a case for everything, but what you can't make a case for is completely eradicating one of the 3 macronutrients, which are essentially carbohydrates. So that's why I'm asking you that no matter what your diet you go on, and we'll be offering in the future this spring the most advanced, in my opinion, the most advanced weight loss course that you could find. And the reason why I'm not calling it just a blueprint or a plan like that is it's a full course. We want to teach people scientifically not only how to lose the weight, but I want you to keep it off for life. Because there's no doubt about it, you can lose the weight through a low-carb diet initially. But the problem is, and this is from a clinical perspective, remember, I practice in a clinical arena, which means that I lab test people and I see people coming off keto. It's mainly women, but still, I see the lower thyroid and I see the higher or the lower levels of progesterone, and I can see oftentimes the higher levels of cortisol. And people are then combining that with coffee in a fasted state. They're fasting for very long periods of time, and their hormones are just not up for it. Now, can some people? Absolutely. But for me is after you've lost the weight. And so again, we do our 21-day detox. We do that, and that is a lower carb diet plan. But then right after that, we're actually introducing berries back in with your smoothie in the morning. And then we're oftentimes doing them after a workout. We allow you to figure out what your carbohydrate tolerance is. Because the more, in my opinion, the more fruit and vegetable that you can eat, especially organic, the more nutrients you're going to get. And the more nutrients your body can get, not calories, but micronutrients, the healthier your human being you're going to be. Because you're going to get all the vitamins, you're going to get all those minerals as naturally as you can. Right? So that's the way that I want you to look at it, is there is no good or bad. So if people tell you that carbs are bad, automatically they're incorrect. And if people tell you a high carb diet is good, well, they're automatically incorrect as well. So that's the reason. Whenever you say one thing is absolutely the best for everyone, you're automatically wrong. Like automatically, 100%. And the reason is that there is this thing called bioindividuality. So there is absolutely people that could say, I feel better on a low-carb diet. And I don't disagree. And for those people, more of the endomorphic body type, we're doing predominantly vegetables for that body type, right? But we are also adding in berries. We are also adding in low glycemic fruits. And when they want, something a little sweeter, they do want something a little bit more enjoyable, and we have boosted their metabolism, then what we do is we add those carbohydrates after the workout, about 45 minutes to an hour after that workout. So they've gotten the real full fat burning effects from that workout. We've already boosted the metabolism for the next 24 to 31 hours. And now we're going to add some of those enjoyable carbs, like whatever it is that they want. And yes, you can still do some starches. The other reason why starches are important, such as sweet potatoes and yuca and yams, etc., and even some wild rice and even some quinoa. Now, one of the reasons why those things can be so great is that they help to produce more serotonin. They help to produce more dopamine. Those neurotransmitters make you happier, you feel good, you feel satiated. They help to produce melatonin at night, so they help you sleep better. So that is also one of the many reasons that we do not want to cut out completely carbohydrates from our diet. And the same time is you don't want to go on a super high carb diet if that's also, you're not someone that's a high glucose burner, that you don't burn through your carbs that quickly. And this is, again, something that you can be tested. And I've spoken about this before. You can just go to stevencabral.com/podcast and just type in glucometer. And that's spelled GLUCOMETER. And you'll be able to test your blood sugar upon waking. Is it below a 95, 75 to 95? After a meal, is it after 2 hours to 2.5 hours, 3 hours maximum, is it back below 95? And if it's not, well, it could be, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, you may have had too much protein, too much meat at that meal, because that increases the glycemic load of the meal, which can actually spike blood sugar as well, increase a great amount of insulin. So you have to look at variables. That's what being an integrative doctor or an integrative health practitioner is all about, is looking at the variables and asking why. It's also why that you need data. This is the reason why we don't do one appointment with a private wellness client. We don't. Yes, we do it when someone orders a lab from equilibriumnutrition.com, because when they order the lab, they get my reading, they speak with one of the health coaches, they get all of our recommendations, and they understand what that lab means. But as a concierge client, and I recommend this for any doctor that you decide to go to, any practitioner that you decide to go to, it should be for a minimum of 3 appointments. The first appointment is your intake. The second appointment is the reading of the labs that you may have done and your wellness plan, and then another appointment 4 weeks later so that you can make adjustments to that plan based on your bio-individuality. Because if you think even the greatest doctor or health practitioner in the world is going to get it 100% right out of the gates, you're wrong. And only a doctor or practitioner with a massive ego or who hasn't been doing it for very long will say that to you. Because oftentimes, yes, you can get it pretty much perfect because based on your experience. But you're never going to get it pretty much perfect 100% of the time. And for every single person, you're going to need to make those adjustments after 4 to 6 weeks because you need to see how their body's reacting. That's exactly how we do it for weight loss as well. So first we do a refeeding meal to make sure that their metabolism is boosted back up, that leptin and ghrelin levels. And if you've never heard of leptin, LEPTIN, check that out at stevencabral.com/podcast. That is going to allow you to start burning body fat again, right? Because your body needs to be told it's time to burn body fat, right? So that's what we do with some of those higher carb diets. So higher carb, meals to get that leptin and ghrelin back up. But then after that, we are doing our 21-day detox. We are helping people lose the weight. And then we're going into that maintenance phase where we continue to lose 1% of the body weight each and every week with a once-a-week higher carb meal. People can make it a cheat meal. They can make it a flex meal, whatever they want to call it. And they can enjoy themselves at that one meal of any foods that they would like to continue to tell the body that it's not a starvation-based state. I'll be teaching that later this spring. For right now, I do want you to see how carbs can actually be used to your advantage. Going back to the Candida plan, yes, in the very beginning, whether someone runs an organic acids test and finds out they have Candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, we do a very specific type of, we don't do a Candida diet. It's our sensitive gut guide. It has to do with lectins. It has to do with digestibility. It has to do with fructans. It has to do with lactose. So a lot of those, yes, they're going to share similarities with the Candida diet, but we allow about 24 types of fruit and we allow about 36 types of different vegetables. And then the starches get to come back in. How do we know? Well, we test variables, but it's not lower carb, but it's lower Candida feeding carbohydrates in the beginning. That's for sure. But then we don't say that's forever. The whole plan in totality is 12 weeks. But after 6 weeks, you begin to introduce the carbohydrates, the other ones that aren't on the list because we don't exclude all of them. And you get to see, does it cause bloating? Yes or no. It's a binary-based decision. And sometimes it's the amount, it's the load, right? So sometimes a half a cup of sweet potatoes works for people, but not a full cup. Sometimes a quarter cup of lentils works for people, but not a half a cup. So you always start small, and if that works, great. Then we try to introduce it again. If that works, perfect. There's no IgG reaction the next day. What we do is we then move on to a larger dosage if we choose to, or we move on to the next food. So really, really important that you understand is that there's never an all for one. Anybody who tells you that keto is the best for everyone is automatically incorrect. Anybody who tells you that a high carb diet is the best for everyone is also incorrect. Just because it works for their body does not mean that it's going to work in the long term, and it doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone. Just to give you an example, one of the clients that I just recently, I worked with them many years ago, 6-7 years ago, I worked with them on anti-aging, spoke with them the other day. They said they started to add back in whole milk to their diet. It was one of the crazier things that I've ever heard because they've done so well. They got rid of their sinus issues. They got rid of their GERD. They got rid of all these fatigue-based issues, headaches. And now all of a sudden they're going back to milk. And I just said, why would you be going back to adding whole milk into your diet? And they said, well, it's what my mother used to drink when she was younger growing up. So I'm kind of going back to my roots. So first of all, just because your mother drank it does not mean that you should be drinking it. And 60, 70 years ago, things were a lot purer than they are now today. But the other thing is that drinking milk, if you're going to pick a substance in the world, cow's milk has to be the most volatile for human health. I mean, it really does. If I look at it, it's the number one IgG food sensitivity, one of the number one reasons why people get skin rashes, without a doubt. I mean, I can look at that. Tonsil-based issues, ear, nose, and throat issues, mucus issues, sinus issues. And the problem is that this client started adding it back in. They said they were feeling fine. They know better, though. Without a doubt, this person knows better because they've been working with me for many, many years, even before I published my book, The Rain Barrel Effect. Remember, just because you feel well today doesn't not mean that it's starting to creep up inside you. You just haven't met the top of the rain barrel, right? The rain barrel has not begun to overflow, so you don't feel the symptoms, which for this person will absolutely be sinus issues, GERD, it'll be joint issues, it'll be brain fog, etc. And then they'll wonder why, and they won't be able to correlate it to whole milk. And the reason they won't be able to correlate it to whole milk is because they've been doing it for months, right? And they said, but I've been drinking it for months. Well, it's okay that you've been drinking it for months. It's now caught up with you. So I want you to understand that there's never a good, there's never bad. And I could even make a case for milk as well. If you're telling me you're getting it from your neighbor or local farm, and it's a raw goat milk or raw sheep-based milk, and you made it into a kefir or a raw goat's milk yogurt, and you're looking to repopulate your gut because you already did the Candida bacterial overgrowth protocol, and you're just doing a teaspoon, and you're beginning to reintroduce the probiotics, yeah, maybe we can absolutely talk about that. And we're not talking about cold, we're talking about more room temperature, and we're talking about not doing it by mixing it with other meals, right? Because it's not a great food combiner. We can have that conversation. That's why, again, for you, I'm myself personally, I'm not going to use the absolutes as well. But right there is just an example that is not a healthy thing to be doing. And again, a lot of people, just because you're feeling well doesn't mean that you get away with these things, that it's a health food for you. Another one I wanted to talk about, this is a big one. It goes along with the prebiotics and goes along with the yogurt, is prebiotics first, probiotics, right? I should say prebiotics first, no prebiotics. Well, prebiotics can be great. People say you need more prebiotics. So essentially fiber, right? We're talking about fibers that feed the good bacteria in your gut. Well, all of that's true, except for the fact if you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, right? And if you give your body prebiotics, it's going to allow that Klebsiella bacteria, the Pseudomonas, and the E. coli-based bacteria, as well as many others, to proliferate. And you do not want that excess negative-based bacteria to proliferate. You want to keep it within check. So the first thing that you would do is you'd eliminate that first, right? You'd knock it down. You're never going to fully eliminate it. And then you would repopulate the good bacteria, and then you would start to feed it prebiotics. Now, my favorite prebiotics, of course, are what? Just vegetables, right? Vegetables and fruit are all you need in your life for prebiotics, without a doubt. And the same with probiotics versus no probiotics. Well, I kind of explained that. But if you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or you have a bacterial overgrowth in general, you don't want to add more bacteria to a gut that's full of already bacteria. Now, how would you know if you have excess bacteria? Well, you might start getting things like bloating or gas, maybe even constipation or looser stool. So you would run a stool-based test, or you'd run an organic acids test. Again, you can find all of these labs at equilibriumnutrition.com. Every product I talk about, for the most part, is equilibriumnutrition.com. And all of the show notes for today is at stephencabral.com/1061. And you'll find a lot of those links there as well. So that's why I do recommend a daily probiotic for most people. There's no doubt about it. And I'm always repopulating my gut as well. And again, for me, someone that's taken over 3,000 antibiotics during the younger teenage years, for me, I'm worried that that innate bacteria was gone, right? It was just wiped out with 3 straight years of multiple times per day antibiotics. So I don't feel my gut is at its best if I'm not adding some of those good probiotics in there. So the thing I have to understand myself and how I try to teach is that would have been the wrong move for me when I did have SIBO and when I had massive candida overgrowth. I didn't need more. What I needed was actually to empty that rain barrel, right? I needed to empty the fungal overgrowth in my gut, and I needed to empty the bacteria. But after the candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol, that's when we start to repopulate the gut with good bacteria. And I'll give you one more for today, and this is really important as we're going into this new year. We're being our own doctor. We're trying to figure out what's right for us. Some parents that I speak with at my kids' school or people that I just talk about in general, they're either completely against nutritional supplements or they are so gung-ho they're taking like 30 different products, right? So again, being an integrative practitioner, it doesn't mean always being in the middle, but it means taking a balanced approach, right? An approach to create equilibrium in the body. So it's about being able to give your body enough of its to build up enough of its reserve so that it can do its own job. So you're not doing the job for your body. Meaning that's why you don't want to be on high doses of echinacea all year long. Echinacea works best for about 14 to maybe 21 days, and then you come off echinacea because you've already pumped up the white blood cells, you've ramped up their ability, you boosted your immune system, and now it's time to let it come back down. You're giving your body that ability. And the same goes with when I have my kids on the children's wellness protocol, right? The children's immune protocol. They use that for as long as they need it. And the longest time they've ever needed it, believe it or not, was actually a really long time. It was about 17 days, almost 3 weeks that they were sick. And this was 2 years ago. I remember this. And, it was one of those times where I'm saying, I'm going to keep an eye on this. I'm going to watch their fever. I'm going to make sure that they don't get a fever, that they don't start to look listless. And if they do, well, then yes, I will use antibiotics if I need to. But I kept working the process, using the children's immune protocol. And then I'm adding up a little bit more vitamin C and doing all of the things that I need to make sure they're getting their rest, taking days off from school, and they need to take off days from school, not going out during the winter, whatever it needed. And of course, they got well. Yes, of course they got well, right? But for the most part, for that children's immune protocol, they're using that for 4 to 5 days. And then once they get well, we're giving them for another day or so after that. And then through the winter, they're taking their vitamin D. They use a half a scoop of the daily nutritional support powder. We put a teaspoon of the daily fruit and vegetable blend in there. They're getting some probiotics in their water. I think I already mentioned they're doing their vitamin C. We're giving them vitamin D during the winter. So that's the time they mainly do it. And then during the summer months, well, they don't need the extra vitamin C and they don't need the extra vitamin D because they're getting a tan basically every single day. So we look at things as an integrative doctor, and that's what we're teaching you to be. From asking why, if you're going to use a nutritional supplement, you ask yourself why. So if you don't eat sardines or mackerel, wild salmon, or anchovies 4 times a week, you probably need an omega-3. That's just the way that it is. And the reason I can prove that to you is because, again, clinical-based results. You can run an omega-3 test. If you run an omega-3 test, it will tell you if you're getting enough omega-3s. There's no other way to know, but I can just tell you from running thousands of these labs. The only people that ever test out without nutritional supplements are those people eating sardines or wild salmon or mackerel, or trout would count as well, or anchovies 4 times a week, right? 3 to 4 times is the minimum that I've seen. Everyone else needs some type of supplemental omega-3. You can use a vegan variety or you can use the omega-3 support that we offer at Equilibrium Nutrition. It's totally your choice. But I can tell you, you can get it from the whole food, but even if you're eating algae, and even if you're eating walnuts or chia seeds or flax, it's typically not adding up to a 3-to-1 ratio. It's just not of your omega-6s to your omega-3s. But again, you can always prove me wrong and prove yourself right. I'm happy for you to do that. And you just run that omega-3 test. You run it with your functional medicine doctor, your integrative doctor, or you can run it on your own through Equilibrium Nutrition. It's totally up to you. But I want this to be the year that you're proving to yourself what your body needs. And not just for now, for the long term. So that's my whole thing, is that I use higher dose nutritional supplements in the short term to replenish deficiencies, and also something like the parasite protocol, higher dose products to remove those parasites, or for the candida bacterial overgrowth, or a heavy metal detox. We're doing certainly a higher dose of chlorella and vitamin C and other factors like cilantro. But then after the 6 weeks is over of the heavy metal, or 6 weeks of the parasite, or 12 weeks of the candida, right? Or 5 days in the intestinal cleanse, then it comes way down, right? You're coming off of those products and you're just doing a low-level maintenance-based plan, which we call the daily protocol, the Dr. Cabral daily protocol. So that's what I use every day of my life. And then when I need extra, yes, I'll add an activated B complex at lunch. I will do that for energy during stressful times. I will add an adrenal-based product. I'll add some sleep-based things. Why do you need it? That's why you ask yourself. So the daily just supplements what you need on a daily basis. And that's because food now is anywhere from 13% to about 30% less nutrients than it was just in the 1960s. So you can be eating the best diet, which I tried to do, but nobody's perfect. But it gives you that wide variety and spectrum when you're doing a daily based protocol. So there's a middle ground, right? It's not moderation. It's because, different things for different people. But you have to understand is like just saying, I don't believe in nutritional supplements. It's insane to say I don't believe in nutritional supplements in 2019. It's like literally insane because there are hundreds of thousands of studies proving their efficacy. It'd be like saying I don't believe in antibiotics. I'm like, I don't believe in antibiotics for using them except in life-saving conditions. But do I think that they work? Of course they work. Sometimes they work too well. Like in my case, and I took them for 3 years from a dermatologist who thought it would be a good idea just from skin issues. Well, it wiped out not only my bad bacteria in my gut at my body, but also my good bacteria. And that sent me down a rabbit hole of dis-ease of my body. So, but I'm not saying that they don't work. Like that's what we have to understand. I almost believe that they work too well. And that's why we shouldn't necessarily be using them because they're too broad spectrum. And they wipe out a lot of the good bacteria. And that includes our mitochondrial strength as well. So I'll save that topic for another day. So what I want people to understand is like, you don't need to set up a camp where you're saying CrossFit or nothing, interval training or nothing. Some people, and this is great for personal trainers as well, they need to start with just one set. And it should be body weight because they're sore and wiped out the next day after workout. Allow them to work up. And then eventually we can do some interval training down the road. But if the person's exhausted, they already have high cortisol levels, they're depleted. If a person's depleted, they can't be doing super hard workouts. It's only going to further deplete them, further increase their cortisol levels, and make them more run down. So whether it's workout, whether it's nutrition, carbs versus protein versus fat, supplementation, what I want you to realize for the new year is that every diet plan, every exercise protocol, every supplement protocol, even sleep, all of it is based on the individual. Some people need 7.5 hours. Some people need closer to 9 because their day is so strenuous they need more sleep, right? Think about elite athletes. They need even more rest because they're training 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Of course, they need more sleep. So what I want you to do, and if you're an integrative health practitioner, if you're a practitioner listening to this, is that you're basing your protocols and recommendations for people based on a good foundation, right, that everyone needs. But you're allowing it to be adjustable enough to fit that individual. And that's what we call bio-individualized nutrition, bio-individualized based medicine. That's what it's all about. I predict that 2019, 2020 will be the year of personalized based recommendations, personalized based medicine. I do hope that you'll look into this more for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, share it with your coworkers. Of course, if this podcast was helpful, please always do feel free to share this information with them. Thank you so much for tuning into the Cabral Concept. It's going to be a great year. Hopefully you'll ride or along for the journey, and can't wait to help you with any challenges you may have. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your new year. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or a lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests, or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.